Hello everyone, wishing you all a very good afternoon. Today I'm talking on ERAs, the way forward. With evolving surgical and anesthetic techniques, we all have literally seen different eras of surgeries. Today we are in the era of ERAs. What is ERAs? Enhanced recovery after surgery, also previously known as fast track surgery protocols. ERAs it's a multimodal, multidisciplinary approach to the care of a surgical patient. It is a paradigm shift in perioperative care, resulting in substantial improvement in clinical outcomes and cost savings. It involves a team which comprises of a surgeon, an anesthetist, an ERAS coordinator who can be a physician assistant or a nursing staff, and staff from various specialties which look after the patient, as in of a physiotherapy department, rehabilitation department, dietitians, nursing staff, and others. To give a brief history, the concept of ERAs was conceptualized by Dr. Henrik Kærlund, a Danish surgeon in 1990s. In 2001, the ERAS study group was established, and in 2003 they presented their first symposium. In 2005, they first published their evidence-based consensus and protocol for patients undergoing colonic surgeries. By 2010, the advantages and benefits of ERAS protocols were well established for colorectal surgeries, and its principles were starting to be applied to other specialties as well. So why do we follow the ERAS protocol? With implementation of ERAS protocol, we have seen it was seen that the hospital stay is reduced, which translates into its benefits like reduced healthcare cost to the patient. Also, for the institution, with the same infrastructure, they can cater to more patients because of increased turnover of patients. Also, there is reduced rate of surgical and non-surgical complications. Patient satisfaction is improved, and there is better productivity with earlier return to work. How ERAS works exactly? So this is a diagram. On the left side is a diagram wherein a patient is posted for surgery in the traditional conventional protocol. The patient is taken for surgery with the surgical stress and physiological response of the patient. There is a decrease in the baseline functional status of the patient, and which then recovers gradually, slowly over a period of time to his baseline functional status. On the right side is a diagram wherein we are seeing the functional status versus time in a set of patients wherein the ERAS protocol was implemented. When the patient is posted for surgery, the patient undergoes extensive rehabilitation, and then the functional status of the patient is elevated to the near optimal level. Then he undergoes the stress of surgery, wherein there is a physiological, because of the stress response, decline in the functional status. But however, interesting point is that though the decline is there, the decline is less than the conventional regimen. Also, the time taken to reach the baseline or preoperative functional status is much lesser as compared to the conventional regimens. So this is a brief, to give a brief idea how ERAS works. Now, what are the components of ERAS? To make it simplified and easy, the components have been categorized into pre-admission components, pre-operative components once a patient is admitted, intraoperative and post-operative components. The pre-admission components comprise of, as soon as a patient is seen in the clinic or OPD and the surgery is decided, the patient is referred to the anesthesia OPD as well, and proper counseling about surgery and anesthesia is given to the patient with a clear understanding of the procedure, its associated risk, complications, also to set their expectations right. The patient is advised for cessation of smoking and alcohol. It is advised to stop smoking and alcohol for at least 30 days prior to surgery for optimal results. However, if it's not possible, sometimes then even 24 hours cessation of smoking and alcohol does help in the overall recovery of the patient. Assessment and optimization of chronic diseases is looked after in prior to admission, so that that time can be utilized for optimization of the chronic diseases. Nutritional screening and correction. As we commonly see, the patients coming to us are usually anemic. It can be iron deficiency anemia, nutritional, which can be addressed, and hematinics can be prescribed for the same preoperatively to build up their hemoglobin and their general health, which will help in their overall recovery and also decrease the need for perioperative blood transfusions. Also, the patient is advised to enhance their exercise tolerance and physiotherapy schedule depending on the type specific surgery is advised for the patient. Coming to the preoperative components, again, a patient is educated and evaluated for his comorbidities, is given an idea about the whole process of his admission, his intraoperative course and the postoperative course. He's given an idea. The stress is on minimal starvation as per the American Society of Anesthesiologists guidelines, and to load them with carbohydrate rich drinks, which I'll discuss shortly. To have prophylaxis for deep vein thrombosis by using low molecular weight heparin or mechanical devices, and also to identify and treat risk factors for postoperative nausea, vomiting, and to address it accordingly. Selective use of bowel preparation, again, rigid mechanical bowel preparation is not advised in all patients undergoing abdominal surgeries, as it has its own set of side effects. Also, the patient may lose fluids and electrolytes, and we may subject them to dehydration and hypotension, which then intraoperatively necessitates increased administration of IV fluids with propensity to develop fluid overload postoperatively. Also, no routine use of sedative pre-medication is advised selectively in some anxious patients, though it may be used judiciously. As we said, there's a major stress on fasting guidelines on fasting with minimization, minimal fasting advised. So the recommendations are for clear fluids, it is 2 hours, 6 hours for light solid meals, and 8 hours for regular meals. So what is clear liquids? There's usually a huge confusion of what comprises exactly clear liquids. Clear liquids are classified as those which are transparent, non-particulate, and through which one can read. It consists of clear water, plain water, fruit juices without pulp, carbonated beverages, carbohydrate-rich nutritional drinks, clear tea, and black coffee. Though almost all alcoholic drinks are clear, but they're definitely not included, so it does not include alcohol in the clear fluids. Though these guidelines are applied to almost all surgical patients, elective patients, but there are certain exclusions being patients with GI abnormalities or diseases like tumors or gastrointestinal obstruction, morbid obesity, severe diabetes mellitus with autonomic neuropathy, or parturients in labor for emergency surgery, and severe trauma patients. ERAS protocol stresses majorly on reducing the fasting period, and as prolonged fasting adds on to the surgical stress, worsens catabolic state, causes insulin resistance, and may delay recovery. Therefore, adherence to fasting guidelines and loading patients with carbohydrate-rich drinks up to 2 to 3 hours prior to surgery is an effective way to attenuate the insulin resistance, minimize protein losses, reduce the hospital stay, and improving patient comfort without adversely affecting the gastric emptying time. Coming to intraoperative components, again, the stress is on providing multimodal analgesia to make the patient comfortable postoperatively, to address the postoperative nausea, vomiting, to prevent DVT, and other things which we'll just discuss. So minimal access surgeries are preferred over open surgeries. So laparoscopic surgeries are preferred. Small incision surgeries are preferred. Even when we undergo open surgeries, transverse incision or oblique incisions are preferred over vertical incisions. Regarding the use of antibiotics, they are usually administered just prior to the incision, covering both aerobes and anaerobes. The second dose of antibiotic is administered when the duration of surgery is more than 4 hours, or if the blood loss is more than 1.5 liters during the surgical course. Judicious use of IV fluids to maintain euvolemia, to minimize excess salt and water retention, as it is perioperatively there is increased ADH secretion which leads to water retention. And for major surgeries, goal-directed fluid therapy is recommended with minimally invasive techniques. Coming to multimodal analgesia, a plan is made pre-operatively and is explained to the patient. Similar plan is executed intraoperatively and adhered to post-operatively. Use of acetaminophen, NSAIDs whenever not contraindicated should be used. Nerve blocks and regional anesthesia techniques wherever possible should be applied with minimal use of opioids. Use of alpha-2 agonists like dexmedetomidine and clonidine is advisable as anesthetic adjuvants to prolong the duration of analgesia and decrease the requirement of anesthetic agents. Use of regional anesthesia techniques wherever possible should be used, as it avoids polypharmacy of general anesthesia and its side effects, decreases the airway complication, reduced chances of post-operative nausea, vomiting, reduces the stress response, decreased incidence of ileus with excellent post-operative analgesia. Whenever general anesthesia is used, special care is taken to use agents with minimal post-operative hangover, with minimal effects on GI motility, and to take care of post-operative nausea, vomiting. Selective use of drains and catheters should be employed, and not routinely. Ryle's tube and urinary catheters should be used in all patients. Another important aspect is to maintain normothermia during the course of the surgery with use of warm IV fluids, warming mattresses, forced air convection warmers, as hypothermia has its own detrimental effects on patients' recovery. It increases chances of infection and may lead to coagulation abnormalities and increased bleeding tendencies requiring perioperative chance of blood transfusion. Coming to the post-operative components, post-operative management mainly focuses on management of pain to make the patient comfortable, also management of post-operative nausea, vomiting to address the cardiorespiratory issues which may hamper early mobilization, and to institute early feeding and early mobilization. Early enteral feeding is advocated whenever possible, and it should be initiated as soon as possible. It improves the patient comfort and satisfaction, decreases the chances of ileus, need for IV fluids. It promotes wound healing and decreases infection rates. Also, it maintains adequate muscle strength for post-operative mobilization. Early mobilization is possible only if there is adequate pain relief and control of post-operative nausea, vomiting. With the use of, with the help of physiotherapy and rehabilitation departments, the patient is actively mobilized. Also, early mobilization reduces the chance of post-operative DVT. The aim of early mobilization for most major surgeries is out of bed on day 0 and at least 6 hours of out of bed mobilization at the time of discharge. To maintain adequate hydration and start them on oral fluids as soon as possible, thus avoiding fluid overload. To continue prophylactic treatment of post-operative nausea, vomiting, and aggressive treatment if it does occur even after all the precautions taken perioperatively. To not chase urine output, to allow certain amount of permissible oliguria, as I already said that perioperatively there is increased incidence, increased ADH secretion, which takes around 3 to 4 days for normalization. So rather than chasing the urine output and loading the patient with more IV fluids, it can be, the aim can be 0.3 to 0.4 ml per kg per hour of urine output. Also, when epidural is used post-operatively, permissible hypertension of up to 10 to 15% of the pre-op baseline blood pressure can be done. I mean, is acceptable. Multimodal analgesia is a very important aspect of post-operative component of ERAS, as it helps in early mobilization and better patient recovery. Use of pain meds should be carried out round the clock to prevent occurrence of breakthrough pain. Regular use of acetaminophen, NSAIDs, regional analgesia techniques with minimal use of opioids, with patient-controlled analgesia or patient-controlled epidural analgesia should be instituted. Opioid-sparing analgesia techniques are preferred. However, in the first few days or couple of days post-operatively, opioids may be required to control pain in certain group of patients. Early removal of drains and catheters is desirable as it causes significant, as the cause of significant patient discomfort and pain. Also, it may cause difficulties in mobilization. Interesting point is usage of gut motility enhancers, that's chewing gum, easily available, not expensive, especially in abdominal surgeries, wherein its use is recommended for at least 5 minutes for at least 3 times a day. The logic being that chewing gum stimulates secretion of gastric juices and thus reduces the chance of ileus, stimulates peristalsis, and thus allows early enteral feeding. After applying all these components, the most important part is to get a feedback from all the departments looking after and taking care of the patient and the concerned staff, conducting regular audits for the same compliances and outcomes. This is an important aspect for ensuring adherence to protocol and its effective application. So these were the various components of ERAS. Now ERAS, as we said, though it was initially used in colorectal surgeries, it has found major use in all other specialties. These are the, in short, major goals in each surgical specialty. If ERAS is so wonderful, so nice, but why we cannot implement it? What are the difficulties in implementation? The most important of which is it's a challenge to traditional surgical doctrine. There have been certain practices which we've been doing since many years, so we think that is the best, even though there is evidence of otherwise. We are hesitant and reluctant to probably implement those. So other institutional barriers like lack of nursing staff and financial resources, because all the staff from various departments need to be sensitized about its components. Also, because there needs to be conducted regular audits and requires participation from various departments, it does add a certain amount of financial burden to the hospital. Also, sometimes because of lack of communication and collaboration within the team members, sometimes the surgeons were not willing to change their practice, but supportive of changes in anesthetist or dependent elements of post-operative care, like giving blocks or restricting IV fluids. So to conclude, development of ERAS does bring the spotlight on perioperative care. It has already demonstrated the ability to achieve a reduced hospital stay, to improve patient satisfaction, and reduce the rate of complications without increase in readmissions. Just as ERAS is becoming a new norm, it's in the best interest of all those involved in the post-operative care of the surgical patient to be familiar with its principles.